few years ago, I set the goal for Israel of becoming one of the top 5 cybersecurity powers in the world.
An Israeli surveillance software tool capable of accessing microphones, cameras, and other data.
One Saudi dissident says he spoke to Jamal Khashoggi regularly about Riyadh's use of technology to crack down on critics.
Well, I was working with Jamal in some different projects. And I've learned in maybe at the beginning of August that my phone was hacked. So basically, they were listening to every single conversation that we had.
NSO Group, in today's world, based on the evidence we have, they are the worst of the worst. They send you a time-sensitive text message, and it's got a link in it. It's something that you have that human impulse. You see it, you go, oh goodness, I need to check that. Everything in the entire history of your phone, you can immediately copy. Everything that happens on your phone from that day forward, every place you go, everyone you call, everything you read, every photo you take, every audio note that's been on that, or actually because they can turn the microphone on remotely. They can turn the camera on remotely even when you haven't already taken a picture.
Click of a button, you can bring down nations to their knees.
Bonsoir à tous mes camarades. Donc, ce soir, nous passons la deuxième partie. Donc, Rajan, phone au mute, please. Donc, deuxième partie, nous débat de ce soir. Nous proposons à propos de la loi, nous proposons la démocratie, liberté d'expression. And I will immediately swap to English. We have one of our friends, Toby Mendel, from Center for Law and Democracy, based in New York and Toronto, I suppose. Toby will explain to us a bit later what it's about. We have Nilkant Delou, who is a camarade avocat, barrister. Rajan Valaiden, who is an investigative journalist investigation, and Rashna Sinat, our activist. And Arish Chandan Singh, who is trying to connect. We'll see if it is solved in a few moments. Okay, and we'll shoot right now. And we're discussing today about the ICTA amendments proposal. And tonight we'll discuss more about freedom. Toby will share with us his experience in other countries, how it is about, his feelings about these amendments. Is it good? Is it not good? Neil Kant will tell us what is existing in our laws and the importance or not of these amendments. Or is it fake news? Let's see. Toby, I will give you the floor first, and our friends will share and we'll have a conversation together. Maybe Toby, you can present yourself. Toby, who I know is the executive director for Center for Law and Democracy. Maybe you can develop further. What is it, CLD? I know, and we thank you. You intervened to have a communique last year when Rashna Sinat was jailed, okay, for misbehaving according to our local authorities and police and cybercrime unit. Toby, the floor is yours. And
hey, well, thank you. It's a huge pleasure to be with you, and I have to apologize for forcing everyone to speak English, but my Creole is not very good. I can just about manage in French, but not in Creole, I'm afraid. So the Center for Law and Democracy is based in the eastern part of Canada. We're a human rights organization, a nonprofit, independent nonprofit organization, and our mandate is to focus on what we call foundational rights for democracy. So freedom of expression, access to information, freedom of association and assembly, and the right to participate, the kind of the pillars on which democracy sits. And we work all over the world, mostly on law and policy reform issues. So obviously the digital space, which everybody is talking about and which these new measures relate to, is a fast-moving space, and it's a dominant area. So we do a lot of work on that issue as well as many other issues.
Thank you, Toby, for the introduction. Neil Kant and then Rajan. I'll let you with your introduction.
Yes, yes, I am a barrister of the Honorable Society of Medieval Temple, London, United Kingdom, and I've done my studies at the Inns of Court School of Law, London, United Kingdom. I am admitted as a barrister in Mauritius, having been called to the bar in London, United Kingdom, and I've been admitted to the bar in Mauritius, the Supreme Court of the Republic of Mauritius. And I am practicing law in Mauritius since the 23rd of September 2010. And I mainly practice in criminal law, administrative law, constitutional law, and human rights law. And I am also a lecturer at the university.
Thank you, Neil Kant.
Thank you.
And Rajan.
Yeah. Well, I'm married. Right? Well, hi, everybody. I'm Rajan. I'm an activist. I've been an activist for the past, let's say, 30 years. And basically, by profession, I'm a PR strategist. I also happen to run an investigative newspaper. And I'm looking forward to this discussion because it is something which is very important. It's going to define the future of business, of society, of humanity itself. It's something which is happening everywhere in the world. And it's great to have you guys around to share what we can do about it, in fact. Thank you.
Yes, Rajan. Rashna, for your entry note.
Hi, everyone. Toby knows me from my little holiday I took during the first confinement for about 15 hours. I just had enough, staying home. So my interest in all this today is we already have laws that are in breach of our constitutional right to freedom of speech, to freedom of expression, which is in our constitution. And the proposed amendments that the government is bringing is, to my opinion, highly unconstitutional, very invasive, and it is, for me, something that really scares me because it could be used as a weapon of repression by the current whoever's in power. So it just doesn't concern. It doesn't just concern me as an opponent of the current government. It also concerns even those who are supporting the government today. Because don't forget, today you may be in power. Tomorrow you may be in position. So the same laws that are being applied to repress our freedom of expression today, and I look forward to listening to you all. Thanks.
Thanks, Rashna. I don't know if Harish is here, if he can, his microphone is okay. For sure, his camera is dead. Okay, let's move on. Toby, according to your experience about such kind of laws, such kind of regulations or whatsoever that different governments are bringing in different countries, okay? We heard last year when the world was in complete confinement, several countries tried to change the laws in different aspects to restrict, freedom. Okay, you read the document that I sent you, and by the way, thanks a lot, Toby, for accepting our invitation. And you also read about the ICTA Act, existing one, okay, the amended one a few years back. Please share with us your views about your perception about these proposed, amendments.
Yeah, sure. So let me start. I think it's important to recognize the context, which is, of course, in every country, the precise modalities of it play out differently. But this is a situation which, in a sense, every country in the world is facing. And that context is that, in the past, people could go to the coffee shop or go to the market and chat together, and they could say whatever, not whatever they liked, but almost whatever they liked. And, a few people would listen. If it was really defamatory, somebody might get upset and there might be a legal case or some kind of action. But basically, that's how we interacted. And then we had the media who had a big platform, and they had higher standards, and they didn't, talk rubbish and didn't say nasty things, most of the time at least. And so that was kind of the communicative environment that we lived in. Now, with the digital world, that little coffee shop or market gathering has become the whole world. So we chit chat on Facebook, and everyone can hear what we say. We're still saying the same things, but we're saying them in a much louder way, and then others pick up on them and they get echoed and they get transferred around. That's one thing. And the other thing is that if we want to, in the digital world, we can go anonymous. So in the market, if you say something nasty, then the other person hears you and he goes back to the other person and says, oh, you know what Toby said about you. So you're a little bit responsible for what you said, but in the online world, those things disappear. So, and I think I've been a free speech activist all my life, but I think we all recognize that this has caused problems. People have been talking rubbish since time immemorial, but now the volume and intensity of disinformation, what's now called disinformation, just people saying things that are wrong, which has always been the case, but now it's become much more significant and it's becoming more of a problem. So I think we need to recognize that behind the consultation paper, there is an issue, and every country in the world is discussing and thinking and strategizing, what can we do about this? So that's the context. But the problem is, firstly, that it's not easy to solve this problem. And secondly, that most of the time, I would say, the cure is much worse than the illness. So that you get countries imposing harsh measures which curtail freedom of expression and curtail other rights like privacy, sometimes the presumption of innocence, whatever it may be. And that becomes much more serious than the problem. And also those countries, often countries jump to the control measures which seem to be a panacea because it's easy to pass a law, basically, rather than more difficult long-term measures such as media and information literacy, which is about raising the awareness of the public so that they can process the information properly. That's not an easy fix. It takes a long time to raise public awareness about these things, but ultimately, I think that is, has to be an important part of the solution, but it's not as easy as passing a law. So I think that's a sort of a broad stroke context. If I look at the measures, and in the consultation paper, they refer to the government of Mauritius refers to a number of initiatives taken in different countries, of which most of them are focused specifically on very harmful types of speech, like terrorist speech, which is about organizing to kill people, like child pornography, which is, the most heinous form of terrorist speech. Very narrow categories of speech, which cause problems like that.
Arish, mets-toi au mute, Arish, s'il te plaît.
There's a little bit of
Le mute là?
Non, mets-toi au mute.
So I mean, it's interesting to look at those measures, but they are not analogous at all to what the government of Mauritius is proposing, which is a measure to capture all, not only illegal speech, but even harmful speech, whatever that may be, which is undefined and unclear. So I think that's a first point that needs to be made. The only one of those measures which looks a little tiny bit like the Mauritian one in terms of its scope is the German so-called NetzDG law. It is focused only on criminally illegal speech, and that's made very clear in the NetzDG law, which I would encourage, by the way, those who are listening and viewing this program to go and read. It's quite short, it's very well written, very easy to understand. People are saying a lot of things about the German NetzDG law. Most of them are not true. Even what they wrote in the document is not correct as an interpretation of that law. People should go and read it. But I think that what's really concerning about these proposals is the technical measures to implement them. So they're too broad, they're too control oriented. There are those problems. We don't know about the independence of the bodies that are going to be applying them. That's essential. There are very few safeguards built into this. But if you look at the technical measures for applying them, basically, I mean, they are incredibly draconian. Rashna said, this is a massive assault on our civil liberties. And when it comes to those technical tools or the technical tool set, that really is true. Basically, with the technical tool set, they are ripping off any possibility of using encryption. It is a right under international law to use encryption. You have that as a right. Of course, in the context of a specific criminal investigation, they may try to breach your encryption. That's because you are suspected of committing a crime. But this will breach every single Mauritian citizen who uses social media, breach all of their right to encryption, even though they haven't done anything wrong and aren't even suspected of doing anything wrong. And also, it is basically a universal surveillance approach. So they're going to surveil every single communication from every single Mauritian that goes over social media. Again, you have a right under international law not to be the subject of surveillance unless certain conditions are met. Basically, you are reasonably suspected of committing a crime. This is not tailored in that way at all. Every single person, this very the discussion that we're having now, which is being streamed over Facebook, will be surveilled, would be surveilled by this system. So I think it's the means of implementation are really, very, very dramatic and seriously out of line with international law.
Thanks, Toby, for that. I see Harish is back. Harish, I will present yourself. Are you a journalist or an ex-journalist? Okay, I'll let you present yourself. You need to unmute. But just before, Toby, in the States, you say you have the big B, the big brother, who's doing
yes.
everything.
Hello, everyone. I'm Harish Chandan
Singh. Have the big C.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Harish Chandan Singh. I am a former journalist. I've been in journalism for 33 years before I decided to quit. and but still I have maintained. You say, well, once a journalist, you are still a journalist, and this you feel like you still have to write, and you keep on writing. It's what I've been doing since some years on FB. So I have more or less become now more a citizen journalist. That is, I'm trying to do my part within my own on my page, and so I'm really very active. So if you can say, for some being, I'm kind of someone who is much more indulged in FB activism. You have heard surely of judicial activism, but I'm more of the FB activism, and I'm more concerned with whatever proposal of the consultation paper which has been laid down by ICTA. And for me, it's an assault. It's an assault on free speech and freedom of thought. And I'm really very much opposed against this. And that's why I have joined. I decided to join. I'm campaigning anyway, already on my own wall, my Facebook wall. And for me, the very fact that what I am doing, if ever this thing, if they have their way, the ICT has its way, then perhaps I won't be able to do whatever I'm doing right now. I can say, I can, whatever I want to say, I can say it, but while being within the limits of the law and not trespassing any kind of thing, but I can still do everything legally, and I'm doing it well. So until now, I've not been faulted on anything. Whatever they have as ICT law, they couldn't fault me on anything. But now what they have done is something which is going to have far-reaching consequences for everyone, because we are not safe anymore. And I don't believe we can have any free discussion anyway on this one. And that's why I decided to join in and to benefit from your own, whatever you are going to say, and to share with what I think about it. So we'll just, as we proceed along, I'll be able to chip in and tell what I have to say about this.
Thanks, Arish. It's a conversation model. Huh? That is, everyone can intervene and ask questions to anybody. Maybe as a moderator, let's say I'll try to do it. And Neil Kant, before Neil Kant wakes up, or he's blocked. He's sleeping. Okay. Rajan.
Yeah.
I think Neil Kant has an issue. Oh, he's back.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
you can hear me.
Okay, carry on, Neil Kant.
Yes. Did you ask a question? Because I didn't hear your question.
Okay. No, it was, if you want to make your point, I was saying, okay, let me complete maybe my sentence. What's happening right now, my personal suspicion is that the government is preparing the next elections. In order to prepare the next elections, please mute your stuff, Rajan and Likant. They need to control the media. All right, we already have media who have their own agenda, but on the social media, it's the path where there's a majority of people who express themselves, mainly opposites. Okay, I'll give you an example. We're having debates together with Rashna for the past 3 weeks, almost daily, 4 or 5 debates per week. All right. Just imagine if you have this proposed server, proxy server, that will intercept your live. It will be no more alive. All right. And with the delay on Facebook, on Zoom, etc., if there is so much delay, people will not follow. All right. For me, this government is preparing a coup for the next general elections, and this has to go through law. Just to share with you, Toby, in 2016, the government changed law very discreetly in the finance bill, in the budget. The law is about the Representation of People Act, all right, to change the responsibility of the Electoral Commission in Mauritius, which is no more responsible to register electors. The responsibility has moved to the electors, who has to ensure and register themselves for the election of 2019, and nobody knew that from 2016 to 2019. It was a surprise, and people went to the polling boxes and were not on the list. I see something similar coming. Neil Kant, I leave you the floor. Unmute.
Yes. So what I'm seeing here in Mauritius is more politically motivated than being a need for society. There's no such need for society at the moment to go for what we are going. And I personally have been thinking about the strategies developed by this government, and I've come to the conclusion like that there's a big possibility that he's taking the mick out of everybody. He's inciting people to come forward for big, big debates, but in his head, he knew that he will not go ahead with such a law. It's impossible for him to proceed because of our different provisions in our constitution. And also, if not, we are developing now new legislation worldwide to know where the balance of convenience is in relation to the practice of the state and also the citizens' liberty. Even though he tried to circumvent all legal instruments, I think there are arguable case before the court where we can bring out novel issues to prevent dictatorship. Whatever he does, he's not going to get scot-free with it. And if he's going to come with laws preventing people from being free, well, definitely he will lose the next election. And definitely that law will have to be restored after his loss. Whatever he's going to do now will be corrected by a new government. This will be the obligation of a new government. I'm talking political because he's taking the mick out of everybody. He is pretending a public consultation, but he's staying quiet. As a prime minister, he should have come forward saying, look, there's a need for national security. I have started a debate. Do what the previous prime minister did. The previous prime minister, when he wanted to launch consultation, public consultation in relation to electoral reforms, he launched public bid. He came forward. Dr. Ramgulam came in public and said, look, I want to have your views. He stood up for hours and hours talking to the nation and said, well, there's a public issue, there's a national issue, there are international security issues, there are international concerns being raised in the Senate in the United States. We want to address this issue. We want to be avant-gardists. I'm inviting all Mauritians to come forward. But no, what do we see? He is analyzing what's going on in Myanmar. Myanmar is one of his index for reference to grip to power. He's seeing what has been done in other countries where democratic scale has gone too low, how to grip to power. So he's saying, well, I'm going to be the intermediate between you and Facebook or other social new platform that will take birth soon. So he wants to control everything. But this is not possible. This will not be possible because our national legislation, though there need to be improvement, is sufficient for us to counter him. So it's still at public debate, and I have come to the conclusion that he's joking, he's just launching a debate, and that he will not come forward with such an amendment to our laws. We already have laws in Mauritius. The problem is our quality and quantity of enforcement. We have such a small amount of people working for the cybercrime unit. This needs to be extended to the Northern Division, Southern Division, Eastern Division, and Western Division of the country, with a headquarters based in the middle, controlling and enforcing our already existing laws. Police officers need to address the public, not minister. Police officers need to address the public and say, we will enforce our existing laws. This is the problem. We have no enforcement program. The enforcement program needs to be activated as soon as possible. And to do that, you need to recruit. You have to carry out massive recruitment on enforcement division. Because you can't do this and you see that you are losing the battle, and then you want to use hate speech to kill free speech. This is the wrong approach. He knows this is the wrong approach, and he knows if he goes ahead, he's going to lose the next election 60-0.
Thank you. Clear and direct message from Nikon. Rajan Valaiden.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dave. I've been listening to the first part of the debate with the legal and technical guys, and I have a different reading to the situation. Well, we may concur on the intent of the government. We may concur on the sufficiency of existing laws that are there to cater for any bypassing or trespassing of the laws. But my reading is, what was the primary issue about? Right? The primary issue started with the big tech companies and OTT operators. It gathered momentum with what Ish Sukan and Avinash Ramto spoke earlier about the Cambridge Analytica issue, right? And this is something which was gaining momentum, and Facebook had to go and face even a congressional hearing and hearings in other countries, in other jurisdictions. But this debate has gone dead now. And now we are talking about hate speech, about posts that are used on the OTT and social media platforms. And for me, this is just a scapegoat, right? What are hate speeches? Let's go back to the basics. During the medieval period, or even, Toby may know it, during the Far West, we had the famous Judge Roy Bean, where you hang first, then you judge, right? During the medieval period, they used to burn down people, just on allegations. Just if ever you had a flood or heavy rain or whatever calamity, you just blame somebody for it. You accuse them of doing black magic or something, and people will go, the whole village will burn down the house and the person along with the house, right? So allegations, gossip, hate speech has always been there. They go back well before invention of the social media or the world that we know right now. And even recently, I think Toby is well acquainted to Sri Lanka. We were talking earlier. The genocide in Sri Lanka, which goes back to 60 years, there was and all the hate speeches, all the slander that took place, it was not due to the social media. It was not due to the technology. What happened in Rwanda, for example, the genocide in Rwanda, in East Timor, you take any other country where there have been massacres, these systems, these communication devices and platforms were not there. So the main issue about hate speeches is people. And the solution to that is education, right? So this is where we are getting something very wrong. Like, okay, now we are saying because there are a few people talking against the government or having communal, you might spark something, sedition. So we need to take measures to counter that. We have sufficient laws to attend to these issues, right? But what the government is trying to do is the trend right now. It is a trend. But I'm very happy what Toby said when he compared notes and said that he singled out, for example, the part where the consultation paper talks of segregation of all the data, right? This is something very unique, what is being proposed in this consultation paper, which shows intent. And now we come to the part where, for example, the ICTA itself, the independence of the ICTA, a lot has been said. A lot has been said about how the members have behaved. Recently, Toby, for your information, we had a member of the board who himself indulged in slandering people, in accusing them, in telling publicly that he will get them arrested. Right? We have right now, actually, as we're speaking, people who are employed at the ICTA whose relatives have been involved in hate speech. There's a group called Har who's been reported to the Central CID, where there have been talks about acquiring arms and the need to take actions against civilians. And no action has been taken, neither by the police, nor the ICTA. And I confirm it. There are people related to employees of the ICTA who were involved in these groups. And no action has been taken. And it is these very ICTA kids that we are telling today, they will be the one enforcing or drafting the ethics and looking after the enforcement of these ethics. And for me, that's BS. Right? We cannot condone, we cannot accept that such laws. Let me show you the bad faith. A simple example of the bad faith. We are actually in confinement. The confinement will be waived on 4th of next month. The deadline for the submission or for any proposal is the 5th of May. That is the very next day of the confinement. And they expect people who have lost their jobs, people who don't even have food in their houses, people who are facing, recently there have been floods over the last week. There are so many people who are suffering, and you expect those people to come and submit a proposal or to even send a mail? That's totally absurd. And this is where I've been, we should get the facts right. We should get the chronology right? And I call upon everybody, each and every Mauritian, right? The first thing that we need to do is to come and contest, is the ICTA the proper institution to carry out such an exercise? All the people, I take responsibility for what I'm saying. None of the members of the board of the ICTA are independent. Not even the chief executive, who has to take, orders or advice from the minister, who is a political person. So how can he be a member? And we have numerous examples. So the independence of ICTA, the locus for ICTA to conduct such an exercise, I have serious reserves on these people, right? And to come to the Data Protection Office, for example, we've not had a single word from the Data Protection Commissioner, who holds a constitutional post. Nothing has been said till now. And this, I would draw a parallel to I listened to somebody who talked about the biometrics, who made a comparison earlier on the case of the biometrics, right? And we have a judgment, right, which goes back to 19th May 2015 in the case of a person called Praveen Jugnauth, who happens to be the current Prime Minister of Mauritius. And in the judgment regarding the biometric, the storage of data, right? And this is what the three judges, they say in their judgment, right? In relation to Prayer C, we declare that we have done that the provisions in the National Identity Card and the Data Protection Act for the storage of personal biometric data, including fingerprints collected for the purpose of biometric identity card of the plaintiff, are unconstitutional. Well, you may say that that's about the biometric card, but whatever I write, whatever I produce, or an artist, the song of an artist, a painting, a picture, everything it relates to the privacy of a person. It's not only the biometric data of a person which is private. It is every creation of the person which is private. And by extension, this judgment, right, I think it gives way to what I'm saying about the right to privacy and the illegalness and the unconstitutional part of the consultation paper, which talks about storage of data, of private data, right? I believe there are grounds for legal actions. We have sufficient material, sufficient evidence, and it's a sad thing that this government and how it's going to be applied, and that's even more dangerous. And listen carefully to what I'm about to say. The last amendment brought to the ICT Act, right, was not made by the minister himself, bringing the proper amendment to the ICT Act, right? It was brought to a review of the Judicial and Legal Provisions Act. It was brought by the Attorney General. And what they're about to do now is to pass the amendments of the ICT Act through the finance bill. So while the finance bill, which is supposed to be the budget of the country, which is just an accounting activity, which shows expenditure and revenues, and through the finance bill, it's become a tradition now, by extension, amending all other laws, and nobody, when I say nobody, not even the mainstream media, do talk about these things, which very often go unnoticed. Many laws have over the years, especially since 2015, it's become, you know, like a dumping pit for everything what they want to do. And this is what's being done, and this is what they're going to do with the finance bill. And we need to throw our weight into this battle. There is no way out, because what they want to do, it's already, much of it has already been done in terms of technical, you know, the foundations have already been cast, you know, through what they want to do in Kodo, the data recovery centers, through the negotiations that have been going on with Huawei. They have set the ball rolling, and this consultation is just, you know, a namesake. And this is where the bad faith of the ICTA, the incompetence, I don't know who's the stupid guy who wrote this document, but if I know many of you are entrepreneurs, I don't think Dave Sanasi would employ such a guy. So if he's not good to be employed by us, how these people can be entrusted such a responsibility? And let us draw a parallel with what happened following the 9/11 in the US, how the world was forced to adopt anti-terrorism laws. It's the same thing that they're doing all over the world. Out of a sudden, during confinement, every government is being criticized, and they just come out with a law, you know, trying to talk about hate speech. What's wrong with hate? These speeches have been around here. And the funny part in that is most of the people, the fake profiles, those who make the hate speech, are people who are pro the government. And no action has been taken against them till now, using the existing laws. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Rajan. Rashna, a short one, and Arish, and then we pass on to Toby. No, Rashna and Toby.
Yes, I'd like to add on this. Look, I am for free speech. I mean, it doesn't matter if someone doesn't like me. He's allowed to say, okay, what I'm saying is wrong, or what I've written is wrong. But I'm totally against hate speech. And I think we have enough laws already for these kind of I call it crimes, because nowadays you get jailed for these, for posting something. So why are we investing so much in terms of resources into restraining the people's right to free speech? Furthermore, I'd like to add something on this. We've seen cases of high-profile people involved in corruptions, and even a minister being dragged to court, being privately prosecuted in a case of murder, but he's not been in jail one day. He's been to the police morning, and then afternoon he goes back. But when someone posts something, it is deemed so dangerous that the person gets jailed for it. So for me, these punishments are too draconian, like you said earlier, Toby, and it should be proportionate to the crime. One little thing I want to add to what Rajan said, it's really the independence of that institution that is supposedly going to manage all these data. On the day of my arrest, in the morning, right after I've posted it, the moment I opened my Facebook around 8 o'clock, 8 or 8:30 it was, that chairman of ICTA, who is still the chairman today, sent me a private message on my messenger telling me that the post that I've put out there is not correct because I was attacking the prime minister, and I get arrested about 5 or 6 hours later. So I'm not going to make assumptions here. All I'm saying is that I do not trust the ICTA board with doing what they're trying to do, because the guy who actually went and gave a statement against me was a member of the ICTA board at that time, the same person that made racist remarks and was arrested around, I think, about 2 or 3 days afterwards for saying those stuff about members of the parliament and a whole section of the population of Mauritius. So if I compare what I posted with which was a satire, because criticizing the government is free speech. I'm allowed to say that whatever the government is doing, because it's our taxpayers' money, I'm allowed to say that they are not doing the correct things, or they're misusing funds, and I do not trust them with whatever they're doing. But did that warrant me getting jailed for 15 hours? Did it? There was another, I think one of your clients, Neil Kant, who was arrested for sharing a meme again a couple of weeks after. There has been so many instances of people getting arrested. And the funny thing is, it's always opponents of the government that goes to jail. Whereas we have the case of someone, a group of people that got together and lynched publicly and filmed it and posted it on Facebook. One guy for having been saying racist stuff about Hindus, but they didn't even spend 1 hour in jail. They got away with bail, and those are pro-government people. So this ICTA Act should be a cause of concern for every single citizen in this country who values free speech, but also we have also a huge community of expats who live here that could also be, that could also get jailed for saying something that the government is doing wrong. I remember the case of this pilot who, Mauritius pilot, who spoke against the prime minister, and one just a signature, and he's not allowed in the country anymore. So all I'm saying is, we need to all get together, no matter who we are with, which opposition party we're with, or we don't agree with any, we don't adhere to any political party. We should all get together as citizens of this country who values our democracy and to fight against this. It should not happen, because the guy from ICTA himself said earlier, we're about the only country that's going to be implementing it, which means it's never been done before, which means whoever tried it has failed. And I am taking a few instances, such as Kazakhstan, for example. And a couple of days ago, there's also a few articles that India is trying to do the same thing. And I see a lot of people getting together to go and fight this at the Supreme Court. So we, as citizens of Mauritius, even the diaspora, it should be our collective concern to fight against this amendment they're trying to impose on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashna. Just before passing on the microphone to Toby, let me share with you, let's say, we also have the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, in the European Union that Mauritius signed in 2018. And this law, which is one of the most complicated and severe laws in the world about data protection, I discussed with several guys in the outsourcing sector these past days, Yeah, they are quite anxious. I think today in the newspaper, there's an article about the financial services sector in Mauritius who feel concerned about such kind of laws coming where they feel that their business will be at stake, and companies and investors will not come to Mauritius because it is a very severe law. It's I don't remember. It's 20 up to 20 to 50 million US dollars fine. It's really crazy. Okay, this is one law. There's a second one. A friend of mine shared me this today. Let me just try to find it. It's called the Convention 108. This Convention 108, it's about, yes, it's reservations and declarations for Treaty number 108 of the European Union, the Council of Europe. It's about Convention for the Protection of Individuals with regard to automatic processing of personal data. All right. And Mauritius is a signatory of this convention since the 17th June 2016. Let me just try to, yeah, it's here, to read the last paragraph. Declaration contained in a note verbal from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade of the Republic of Mauritius, deposited with the instrument of accession on the 17th June 2016. As per article, okay, I'll pass on the article numbers of the convention, the authority designated for the purpose to render on behalf of the Republic of Mauritius mutual assistance with another party, inter alia article 13.3, to furnish information on its law and administrative practice in the field of data protection, and to take, in conformity with its domestic law and the sole purpose of protection of privacy, all appropriate measures for furnishing factual information relating to specific automatic processing carried out in its territory, with the exception, however, of the personal data being processed. Toby, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I haven't studied the data protection regime in Mauritius, so I can't talk in detail about that. I would say that, we work extensively on freedom of expression, but privacy is another human right. It's a very important human right. Privacy, for the most part, Rajan is a journalist, so he may see sometimes the conflict between freedom of expression and privacy. You want to say something private about somebody and you can't because of privacy rule. But for the most part, privacy supports freedom of expression. For example, I talked before about how under international law, you have a right to use encryption tools. So you use that to protect your privacy so that people won't know who you are and that kind of thing. So there's mostly a supporting relationship between privacy and freedom of expression. The GDPR, the European GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, is one of the stronger privacy regimes in the world. But it's a by and large, it's a strong and positive protection for privacy and for data protection. So I think that it's important for countries to bring themselves into line with that. My own country, Canada, has done that, and we have been approved by the European Union as compliant with their regime, and so we can trade freely with them and that sort of thing. I do want to come back, though, several points. In my first comments, I talked in a general way about the most serious problems with the consultation document and the proposals in it. And I do want to come back, and several of the speakers have talked about the independence of the ICTA. I won't talk about the independence of the individuals on that body because I'm not aware of that and I don't know who they are. But we are in the process, and Deb, you know that we have talked about this before. We're in the process of preparing a legal analysis of the ICT Act, looking at its compliance with international standards. And one of the important points we make is that the structural guarantees in that act for the independence of the authority are not strong enough. In fact, they're far too weak to comply with international standards. It's absolutely essential. One of the key principles of international law to protect freedom of expression, we recognize that some things must be regulated. For example, you must license broadcasters. And so the ICTA does that sort of activity. But the body which regulates in that way, because they have such a strong power over freedom of expression, they have to be independent of political forces, and particularly of the government of the day. And the law must be structured in such a way that it clearly protects their independence. And the ICT Act absolutely doesn't do that for the authority. We also see under the proposals a new body, the National Digital Ethics Committee. And I would just observe, I mean, it's interesting that the title is Ethics Committee. It sort of sounds like a self-regulatory body for journalists, you know, like you might set up your ethics committee to improve your ethics and to do a better job of journalism. But this body is supposed to be, you know, identifying bannable speech. It's not an ethical issue, it's a criminal issue. And so I think it's an interesting title. The consultation paper has very little detail about what this body, it sort of says, we think it needs to be independent. Okay, that's a good sentiment. And the chair will be independent and things. But of course, we would need to see far more detail. What we can say is that the enforcement side, which still rests with the ICT authority, it will not be done in an independent way, because that body, structurally speaking, in law, we have analyzed and it's not independent. And once you get to that point, of course, the possibility of political interference. So it's not only that this proposed regime is vastly overreaching in the powers that it establishes, but as other speakers have mentioned, it does not put in place an independent system for implementation. So the potential for political manipulation and abuse of the system is unfortunately always there. And we see that, you know, even in strong democracies, where that potential exists, governments exploit it. I can tell you in my own country, Canada is considered to be a strong and long-standing democracy, and you know, for the most part, we are. But where a situation arises that the government has opportunities or loopholes or you know, systems for controlling things, for abusing its power, even in our democracy, it will do that, because that is how governments operate. It's not a comment on Mauritius, it's certainly not a comment on the government of Mauritius, it's a comment on the nature of power. So I think that, you know, this is really a massive design flaw. And Rachna also referred to the penalties under it, and the penalties are stated. One of the few things that's very clear in the consultation paper, it says the penalty shall be up to 1 million rupees and up to 10 years imprisonment. You know, I mean, that is an incredibly serious penalty. And I mean, you have a criminal code and you have other laws which penalize serious criminal behavior. This is supposed to be some kind of parallel system to that. And I absolutely don't see any need for criminal penalties like that in a regime like this. And my final comment at this point would be, I mean, in the consultation paper under 6.1, it has a whole list of the type of incidents that, you know, the problematical incidents that were reported over the last year, January 2020 to January 2021. And I would note that, you know, several of those will not be addressed at all by this legislation. For example, the most common problem was hacking, of which there were 524 incidents of hacking that were reported. Hacking is a big problem everywhere. But this regime has nothing to do with hacking. It's not going to stop people. You know, this is for people who are posting public messages or, you know, or group messages or whatever it is, or friends messages on social media accounts. Hackers are people who go into the back end of your system and get into your computer, you know, and control things and steal things and you know, muck things up. So I mean, I think that, you know, we really have to think about whether, I said before, the solution is worse than the cure is worse than the problem. But I think that this regime isn't going to solve probably most of the more serious problems that actually exist in Mauritius, and so that, you know, if it's not a solution even for the problem that you have, despite all of the other problems that it has, you know, then that's another serious failing. So I really think that I mean you know, Nicolanth said that maybe this is just a joke and that they're not really serious about this or whatever. I mean, I guess that would not be a straight way to play politically, but I guess we can hope that maybe that is the case. But I think that certainly whatever is put forward as a concrete proposal in due course would have to be very, very significantly different from this, both as to the scope of application, the measures it uses, the independence of the way it's applied, all of those levels would have to really change quite a bit for it to come into line even closely to international human rights.
Thanks, Toby. You just said about the amount of fines, the fines value. Okay, one question: if you don't wear a mask in Canada, what is the fine? Roughly,
I'm not
the maximum.
I don't know if very many people have actually been fined for not wearing a mask. But it's not something I should know this, but I think the fine may be $1,000. Although I don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure.
Sure.
But really, that is never applied. What happens is you try to go. So in Canada, you need to wear a mask inside. So if you try to go into a place and you're not wearing a mask, the owner will say, please, you need to wear a mask, and then everybody will put the mask on. But if the person were to refuse, then they say, okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to call the police to remove you from this premise. And at that point, the person's going to leave or something like that. I mean, we don't, but the fine will be very small. I know, for example, there was at one point you weren't supposed to go in certain places. So, and the fine for that was $1,000.
Okay, my question is about comparison. Mauritius is a very rich country. The fines in Mauritius for not wearing a fine goes up to 500,000 rupees, which is $12,500. 12,500 US dollars. Thanks, Toby. Arish, I pass you the mic. Unmute. Micro.
I think it's okay. You should be hearing me now. Yeah, I've been listening to every one of you, and it was quite interesting to hear all of you, but I just wanted to take you through what we are going about this party which is in power, which is the MSM. In fact, Ninka just spoke about these parties' prospects at the next elections. I don't know what's going to happen. But this party has got a track record of being very, very anti-democratic and very anti-free speech. And you should go back up to 1984, when this party was in power with another prime minister, but the father of the current one, the incumbent. They came up with a law, which was the Newspapers and Periodical Amendment Act, which was stifling newspaper freedom. So this was an attack, a direct attack on free press, and it happened in 1904. And then they followed it up in 1985 with one amendment to the criminal code, wherein it was making of politicians, that is ministers, government ministers, a special category of persons from you could not criticize to them without just risking a very hefty fine or even imprisonment term, just as it is happening now. What I would like to tell you is that this government or this party which is in power, it has always been very, very anti-democratic in its approach against the press or against free speech. You can mention, already, maybe perhaps I'm not giving you any piece of news, that will express the kind of boycott that it has been subjected to. That is no advertisement revenue, no government advertisement. And also, L'Express has been banned from all public offices. So L'Express can't be bought by any civil servant. They can't be read by any civil servant. So this is government. So whatever is happening or what we are seeing now, it goes back to what this party stands for. This party has always been for stifling dissent. They can't accept dissent. Anyone dissenting has got big problems with this party. This is one. The second thing that I have noticed with this party and this government and this prime minister, before that, Rachana I think she cited the case of this pilot, the airport pilot, who has been just given a prohibited immigrant in Mauritius just because he had something against the prime minister, issued some statements, and then I think there was a strike at the Mauritius. That's why he was there. He was heading it. But you would see that he was overnight declared a prohibited immigrant, and then he wasn't even allowed to marry a Mauritian. He was married to a Mauritian, but he was allowed to stay in Mauritius for that purpose. This is one thing. Second thing that we will see, when this government wants to do something and wants to have its way, it will have it. Whatever you say, however much you can go and say things. That's why I'm a bit doubtful what Nilkant is saying that they are going to backtrack. I doubt. Because these people, they have an overinflated ego. And this prime minister is not going to bow down to any pressure. And until now, he has been doing so. I just quote one example is that take the appointment of Mrs. Boyga at the head of the Mauritius Standards Bureau. Everyone was against it. People started saying that, no, it's not on, it's not good. And they went up to the extent, and the board also, the board of this parastatal body, they also opposed it. So what the government did, they changed the law. They got an amendment to the law, and they replaced the board altogether just to get their win. So I'm really very doubtful about this. And then I would like just to ask, what is the sudden compulsion of this government to come up with this kind of amendments? Why do they want to police social media? This is the question. Because as I think Toby said it earlier, any government which comes, while they are in opposition, they are all the big fan of freedom, of what called freedom.
Did we just lose Harish?
He spoke too quickly about freedom. Freedom is a censored, word.
Did
Toby?
we just lose?
Yeah, we lost him. Okay, let's carry on. Any questions between yourselves, Nilkant to Toby or Toby to Rajan? Let's say, feel free.
Well, I have an issue which I'd like to ask Nilkant and even Toby to react on. One of the things I've observed is, the obsession. Right now, we have laws, right? For example, we can get a judge's order, go to Facebook, and ask for an action to be enforced, right? Be taken. And this has happened in many cases. But there seems to be an obsession to replace the courts and the judge's order by this famous Commission of Ethics. And I was talking to Rachna earlier, and I said, even in the days of ancient Athens, right, we're talking about 7th century before Christ, when we had the famous legislator Draco, even he insisted that every law should be passed, enforcement should be done through a court of law. And we are talking 7th century BC. And now, in 2021, we are trying to evade the court of law and substitute this institution by a committee of, there's a famous word, maybe you will, we need to teach you that, Toby, it's called chatwa, right? So chatwa means, the cronies, the handymans of the politicians. And these are the nominees in many of our institutions, right? And they do the dirty work, right? So we have those people in these commissions. So why is it? Is there any other country which is doing a similar thing, replacing a court of law by by something called an ethics committee?
Shall I respond on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that you're absolutely right, of course, that serious measures need to go through courts of law. So if you're going to be fined, certainly if you're going to be imprisoned, that it's under international law, that has to be done by a court of law. The problem with the online space is that the volume is so large You know, if you think about like even genuinely illegal things online, hate speech, child pornography, you know, we couldn't possibly run all of that through our courts, or it would just, you know, completely bring down the courts. They couldn't process all of that stuff. So we do, for taking material down, for example, child pornography. You know, we're talking about, and I mean, it depends what kind of material you're talking about. We're talking about child pornography. I mean, I think everybody agrees that child pornography has to come down quickly. Okay, and we, you know, it's absolutely obscene. It's an abuse in itself. It leads to other abuses, and you know, there are all kinds of problems with it. So we need systems for bringing it down quickly. So we can't run that through the courts, and we do in other administrative areas like the ICT authority. You know, has the ability to regulate the licensed operators, the operators as licenses for administrative infringements. So I think it's common to put in place independent regulatory bodies which do have the power to take actions to resolve problems in society of a non-criminal nature, though.
Well, let me just stop you on that, Toby. Regarding child pornography, we have a system in place since 2011, which does the tracking.
For what?
For the tracking of child pornography, right? So the system is already there since already 10 years now.
Right.
And we have laws, and we have, it's quite a mature system.
Yeah. So, and that's
coming to substituting the courts of law in this particular context of hate speech and fake profiles, and this is something which is very surprising to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think that you know, but at the very minimum, if you're going to put in place a regulatory system, as I said before, that has any measure of control over expression, then under international law, it has to be robustly independent of government. Otherwise, it gives government control over speech, and that is not protecting free speech. So if you have an independent regulator, you know, here in Canada, we have an independent regulator which regulates broadcasters, and it can take measures against broadcasters if they breach the broadcasting code of conduct, for example, and you know, for hate speech or whatever. I mean, it can't criminalize them, but it can fine them, or that sort of. Mostly, it warns them, but whatever. But it is, you know, completely independent of the government. The real problem lies when you give that power to government. The other problem, and this is where I have a problem with the NetzDG, the German NetzDG law even, is that a lot of governments are trying to shift the burden for regulating all of this stuff onto the companies. It's interesting, your proposal at least is to say, well, the companies aren't helping us, we're going to do it ourselves. But a lot of governments are trying to push that responsibility to the companies. Ultimately, those companies are profit-making entities. That's what they want to do. They want to make money. And Facebook has a way of making money. You know, it drives traffic to its system. It gathers personal data, it advertises, and makes money. I mean, that's basically what it does. So, you know, and you're looking at it from the point of view of a political interference and the government controlling speech. But from my point of view, it's equally problematical to have a private profit-making entity controlling speech because, you know, it doesn't have our free speech, public interest at heart.
Well, that's exactly my point at the very outset. I said the primary issue was regulating those tech companies, which hasn't been solved. And right now, what we managed to do after years of discussion is you go on any news site or even soccer, you know, your club, you find a disclaimer in small characters, and you just have to click on I agree, which is a bigger character. Right? You don't even go through it, and it installs cookies on your system. That's it. Nobody ever reads the disclaimer, and that's all we managed to do over 5 years.
So I think that there are defined circumstances in which an independent regulator could take certain measures respecting speech, not criminal measures, obviously, but you know, even potentially taking down. But where you have, you know, non-independent bodies like the ICT authority doing that, then it's absolutely not in line with the international standard.
Next topic, need count. And we move back to Irish.
Yes, I agree with what my friend said about a scapegoat. Could be that this discussion is coming on the national media so that they give them enough time to escape all the problems they have with audit, corruption, judicial inquiry, Angus Road, election issues, and the most important out of it, the current economic situation of the country. Secondly, when it comes to passing the laws under the Finance Act, the financial provision of this country, that brings me to the thought that the national identity card, the biometric collection of data, fingerprint, iris recognition, facial recognition, was done in Mauritius in 2009, and there were no specific legislation because it formed part of Section 15 of the 2009 Financial Miscellaneous Act number 2. And in fact, what happened when this law was voted in the parliament, it brought at that time the law to empower the current national identity card. And the irony out of it, I do understand. I don't have the proper information on it, but it's pretty sure, unless he denies it, that one of the person who voted for the Section 15 of the Financial Miscellaneous Act, bringing the national identity card, was a member of parliament at that time. His name was Pravin Jagnat. He is the current prime minister. So he voted there. And then when it took time to implement, when the time came for implementation of the national identity card, he rushed to the Supreme Court and contested the implementation of the national biometric identity card. He sought an injunction, and then he proceeded by a plea with summons on constitutional issues against the collection of fingerprint and biometric data. Then what happened? He won the election in 2014. Then it was himself, applicant against himself, respondent, because he was nominated Minister of Telecommunication. And then what happened? Soon after the implementation of the card, he didn't change it. It went the same way. There was a Supreme Court decision on constitutional issues, and as my friend has said, Rajan has said, it was declared unconstitutional to store the data. He was a contestant, he was an applicant, and again, he was contesting the biometric card. There was Dr. Mahadevu, and the third applicant is me, and my case is still before the Supreme Court. And I'm still contesting, and I have been gathering all those Indian cases which support my application in the Mauritian context. The thing is, what we have a trick being done under all financial provisions to bring out laws affecting the liberty of people, affecting the privacy of people, and to promote the illegal collection and storage of data. Why I say that it's still being done now, despite the Supreme Court judgment saying that you're not allowed to store fingerprint and facial recognition data. Last week, the Prime Minister came following a question put to him by the Member of Parliament Rissor Jival for constituency number 12, Maiboop and Manya, and he said to this Member of Parliament that I have been informed by the Commissioner of Police that we are not yet using facial recognition data, but it may be possible in the future for us to use it to track down criminals who are on the run and for surveillance of criminals. So what is this? You contested the law which you yourself voted. And now you're saying that you have to destroy it because there's Supreme Court judgment. You say, yes, we are collecting it, but we have to destroy it later on. So come and give your fingerprint, give it to us. Compulsory for you to give it to us. but then when you give it to us, we will destroy it. And then there's an answer saying, well, we will use facial recognition. I don't know. This is a very big problem. People need to be alerted, and thank my friend Rajan for alerting our opinion on this, using this mechanism under the financial provision to bring unconstitutional law, and this is going undetected. I'm doing a case before the Supreme Court, and I have a case, and I'm using this argument. Thank you very much, my friend, for alerting public opinion on this. This is ongoing, but then it is being done under different prime ministers. So there's a problem not on our prime ministers, I think. There's a problem in the institution itself. Those advising the governments, there are agents who do not understand the legal mechanism. They are taking what's being done in other parts of the world, in undemocratic country, to put it laws here. What's going on, Prime Minister? We are in a state of confusion, and we are going to bring you to task for us to give us an explanation. Please explain to us what is in your mind.
Merci, Nilkant. Donc, Arish, tu as coupé, tu es là. Let's give the floor to Arish, and then Arish, Rashna, and Toby will close up. Already almost 10. Micro.
Yes, sorry pour tout à l'heure, c'était un...
Arish, tu le mute. Rashna, Roden 33.
That's okay, right now? Can you hear me?
Correct, c'est bon.
Yeah, so sorry for tout à l'heure, there was a technical glitch and it has been resolved. I had just to maybe carry on what I was talking about is about the compulsion for this government. As I told you, this government doesn't do anything haphazardly. There is something which is gone behind. As I think Nilkant just says this, they are sitting on a powder keg. I believe the economic situation is going to deteriorate further. And they are in, I think, for normal popular discontent. What they're just trying to do, I think, is just to try and protect themselves from the social media for what the kind of ragging that they're going to get. And this is what they're just trying to stop right now. And I don't believe they're going to stop at what they are trying just to do. And they will go on to doing, as I told you, this government has got a track record of going against all criticisms and is not going to stop at it. It did it when the ICTA law was amended. It was the same thing. And you can see that this government also believes very much in propaganda, but in positive propaganda. You will see how many outlets that it is promoting actively, whether the radio stations which have just got a license, or there are some other outlets which are looking for them. But they also, I think they give much credence to whatever criticisms are there, and they don't like criticisms as such. They are very, I think, allergic to criticisms, and they don't like to be taken. I think most governments are like that. The moment they are in opposition, they are all very pro newspapers, but once they get into power, then they are against newspapers, that we are witnessing with this one. So my point is that we should not take them lightly. Nilkant may be right when says that maybe perhaps in view of the large hue and cry that we are saying, that they might backpedal, but I doubt. I would like to see it. To believe it, I'd like to see it happening. But as I know them, as I have seen the psyche of this Prime Minister, how it works, that he always goes against those people who are opposing him, I believe they are going to go through this. They are going to rush it. And we have just to now prepare ourselves to give it have a good fight with them, but it's going to be legally. And I still believe that the only recourse that is left to us is that I keep on telling all people that we have to knock the door of the Supreme Court. Nilkant has been doing it, but I believe we have to do it, and we have to take them to where I think the courts here in Mauritius are still independent. And I still believe I have full confidence in the courts of Mauritius. The office of the DPP, these are the two institutions which I can say safely are still independent. independent in the true sense of the word. But as for the other institutions, we already know they're all working for government. As ICTA is nothing, which is a political emanation of MSM. ICTA for me is an emanation of MSM also. It functions as a sub-office of MSM. So we shouldn't have great hopes from ICTA. In fact, ICTA is here to do a job, is doing a political job, has got a political appointee as its head, and he's here to do a job and to do something for the MSM, to protect the MSM. And this is that which should happen. And I think that we should get ready. I think the battle is going to be tough, but we'll have to do it. I can tell you that from my own experience, it was in 1994 when they had come with this Newspapers and Periodicals Amendment Act. Sir Anu Jagannath was the same kind like the son himself. He was very foolhardy. He insisted on having his way. But at the end, with the international pressure issues there, and the local pressure from the newspapers and the press itself, and he had to backpedal. This law had to be taken back again. So I believe that we can do this. If we could do it in 1984 with popular pressure, international pressure, I still believe that we can do this next time also. If something could have been done 30 years ago, I don't believe why it shouldn't be taken now with all these things that we have right now. I believe that we have to take on, I think, international organizations of defense, whether it's Freedom House, it's Human Rights Watch. We have to go and petition all these bodies so that we can just take this government to task, because it's going too far now. I believe they're pushing their luck too far, and it's time for us to stand up to them. This is my belief.
Merci, Harish. Rashna, a closing note, and then we close with Toby's advice on how to move forward.
I agree with you, Harish, that we need to go to our Supreme Court and have this law. I'm sure they're going to vote for it, repealed. But I am also very skeptical on the efficacy of our courts, because we have several petitions in court disputing the election of the same government that's trying to take away almost all our rights, and it's been 16 months. Don't tell me that because of COVID and whatnot. Come on, all other countries have been they are more affected than we are, and the courts have been operating. There have been, systems such as visual conferences and all that. So yes, you're right. The battle is going to be a long one. However, I'd like to say that I believe, and it's just an opinion, so I hope I don't get arrested for that. I believe that they already have a system in place monitoring Facebook, because my group got disabled last week. Yesterday, or was it? Yeah, no, 2 days ago, I was having this bizarre thing happening on my profile where I post something, it comes up twice, and then when I go back to my profile, I can't find it. Dave was telling me that he was trying to comment on it, and then it just went away. And whenever you report pro-government fake accounts, they never get taken down. The posts are still there. I'm taking the case of Mrs. Kisnan, who's been going through a lot of harassment, 5 or 6 videos of her out there, and no action has ever been taken on Facebook side. But the moment opponents of the government post anything, they are being flagged as spam. A guy actually commented on one of my posts. He put the link, the BBC link, okay, where the Kazakh government did the same thing that our government is doing, and his comment was flagged. A few people told me the same thing, like they commented on my post or tried to post something on my wall, and their comments got deleted. So my point is, they're just trying to legitimize what they are already doing. So I don't think I'm wrong in saying that we are already being surveilled. It's just a matter of making it legal civilians, and make it legal for them to come after you, because right now they can't. So wake up, people. We need to fight this. It's not going to happen in one day. It's not going to happen in 2 days. it's going to be a long fight, and we have. I am very grateful that a lot of people are speaking up against it, and this time, this is something that is going to affect everyone: business owners, BPOs, private individuals, small businesses. Everything is going to be spied on. Big Brother is here. We need to wake up and stop it right away. Just before I end, I'd like to say something about the current prime minister. You were saying he went and fought against giving private data, but let me quote Herbert Hoover. It is a paradox that every dictator has climbed to power on the ladder of free speech. Immediately on attaining power, each dictator has suppressed all free speech except his own. So I rest my case. I'm not going to say that we're in a dictatorship yet, but we're heading towards one. So I hope we can create enough awareness among our young people, tell them the risk and what they can be facing in the next coming years. Thank you.
Thanks, Rashna. Before passing to Toby the mic for the ending note, you were speaking about King Jong too, or the new King Jong. All right, okay, I agree. I share your views, in fact, Rashna. Let's say we talk so often. We have also many friends working around. Yes, we believe there is a baby proxy running around somewhere. Okay, the baby proxy is here. My personal stuffs, on Facebook. Yeah, we get so many surprises, and as I was sharing with you, a senior MP called me today, sharing the same issues he's having. Okay. I started this debate with a video on Jamal Khashoggi. I will now share you why. Because Rashna just talked about Mrs. Kisnan. Mrs. Kisnan, to share with you, Toby, there is a guy named Mr. Kisnan who was murdered 18 months back, roughly, all right, around October 2019. No, 2020, no? 20, yeah? 20, yeah. Sorry, yeah, 20. The guy was murdered, was burned, in a sugarcane field, all right? This guy was a political agent of the actual government, okay? A close, senior, very senior political agent. The guy was murdered. How do I do this parallel between this guy and Jamal Khashoggi? Jamal Khashoggi was, as we all know, was cut into pieces in the Saudi embassy in Turkey. And everything happened because all his communications were hacked. His WhatsApp communication was hacked. Some kind of technology was used. Okay, maybe a message to Rama, the lawyer. I mean, maybe he could ask some kind of information and go and dig further into ICTA. Who knows? It's only a question. Who knows if this guy who was murdered shared information on social media, one-to-one, private information, private exchange that maybe he shouldn't have shared. Toby, I'll give you the mic, and maybe also Toby, when you intervene, what next? How can we and how we'll move forward? All right, about the consultation. Yes, Rajan, your comment.
Just well, it's not every day that we have Arish online, so I'd like to make the most of it. And just to remind, in case this law comes for debate at the parliament, and we know how strong the government is in terms of number of seats. And I'd like to remind people, when the prime minister will come with all his ease and try to comfort people about the good intent of the law, there is an episode of 1987 or 88, when they were discussing on the creation of Mauritius Telecom. At that time, there were many questions that were asked because there was a merger between the overseas telecom services and the Mauritius Telecom services. And Anirudh Jagnat, who is the father of Parin Jagnat, stood up and gave the guarantee that every single question about Mauritius Telecom would be answered in this house. Right? And today, we know exactly that not a single question about Mauritius Telecom is answered. It's not even entertained.
Merci pour ça, Boubatikon. Okay.
And this is the same thing that's going to happen. This is the way that they're going to proceed. They will give all sorts of guarantees, warranties, and whatever you want, and it will never happen because it has a specific purpose. I think you can confirm what I'm saying, Harish. And,
yes, indeed.
It happened more than once.
Yeah. I think it was more or less the same thing with the safe city cameras also, because we were told that it was good for our security, but now we find that there are all the guarantees that were there. Now that we are just trying to, for this detection of this crime against Mr. Kisnel, then the cameras are not working, or there are certain things which we were told that it was capable of, it's no more capable of it. The storage of this footage itself, I think it was used to be footage, the storage should have been longer time. Now it has been cut down to only 30 days. There are things that we are learning which were not there before. So things have changed completely. On many issues, there is that one thing, one guarantee that they give by the time when they are passing any law or any bill, but then at the end, it's not the same thing that we get. It's not that the package that we get at the end is not the same that we are promised. Yeah.
Publicité mensongère, tu veux dire.
Yes, indeed.
Ok, let's wrap up.
Il n'est pas mensongère, mais il est trompeur. Hein?
Yeah.
Il est very trompeur.
Ça, c'est une spécialité, ça. Qui trompe, qui klaxonne. Toby?
Yeah, well, maybe just a few final comments. I mean, I think obviously, I think I've made it pretty clear that I don't think that this proposal is in line with international human rights standards. They have a period of consultation. People have been given until the 5th of May to make comments. I would certainly encourage people who are watching this, listening to this program, to engage and to submit comments. I think it's important for Mauritians and also for international human rights organizations to make it clear that we don't believe that this is in line with international standards and it's not a proper approach going forward. And there may be international mechanisms that we can engage if the government does push forward with it. And obviously, local mobilization and advocacy strategies. I would like to end up, though, on a positive note. And I think that sort of instead of a measure like this, which I don't think is essentially the right approach, I would like to outline, and not just to sort of push back and say, don't do this, but say what I think the government should be doing. And I would outline three strategies. The first, and I mentioned it in my initial comments, media and information literacy is ultimately a very important strategy to address harmful speech online. We need, especially our young people, but also our adults, to understand, what the nature of speech online, what speech they can rely on, what speech they can, how to verify things, how to deal in a protective way, if you will, with the barrage of online content that people are exposed to every day. So I think media and information is super, super important. If Mauritius is not already doing this, this needs to be incorporated in a major way into the school curriculum. Here in Canada, I have three, now they're young adults, but 3 kids that have gone through the school system. They know more about the digital space than I do, and they learned all of that in school. So that should be the case in Mauritius as well. And you also need programs for adults. That's a very, very important strategy. Secondly, as Neil Kampf mentioned, a lot of what's being talked about here is criminal behavior. It's criminal under your criminal laws. And to the extent that that's true, whether it's hate speech or child pornography or terrorism or incitement or whatever, you need proper enforcement systems. It is more challenging to apply the law in the modern digital era. No question about that. These criminals are often pretty sophisticated technologically. We hear of young hackers breaking into major places like, security agencies in developed countries and things. So, they're quite clever. We need to be more clever than them, but we need to have a strong law enforcement response, whether it's by boosting the cyber security elements within the law enforcement agencies in Mauritius, or stronger cooperation with other countries, or whatever it is. So I think that that's another part of the solution. And then finally, although the consultation paper kind of writes off the companies as saying, well, they don't care about us and they won't do what we say, that's not true. The companies, although they have their failings, certainly they will do, especially with respect to the more seriously criminal, the more harmful stuff that's out there. They will, each company has its own policies and its own approach, but they will cooperate. All of the companies have agreed to take a pretty strong line on things like child pornography. Facebook won't allow any pornography at all, even nakedness, which isn't pornography. So they have a very family-friendly policy on that. So there are lots and lots of ways to collaborate with the companies. They have gotten more responsive to, they're still not excellent on this, but they've certainly gotten more responsive to the needs of different countries and different languages. So another point that's made in the consultation paper is, these guys don't know anything about our language. I don't know what capacity they have in Creole, but I doubt that that's true, because they are, pretty sophisticated on languages, and they can operate in a lot of different languages. And if you push them, then they will, bulk up on that. You can help them and offer them and whatever, collaborate with them. So I think a lot can be done with the companies as well. So I think that there, it's not. I said it in my opening comments. This is a problem. It's recognized in every country that there's a lot of difficult speech, harmful speech, even online. And we're all looking for solutions, and we are coming up with some measures. And these are some packages which at least should be played out to the full before draconian measures like those that are being proposed should be considered. So I would say, let's do what we can from among the measures that are being tested in democracies around the world first. And then if there really is a problem that can't be solved with them, then have a proper national debate about what should be done. And there are, even in that second area, if we are going to have specialized measures, there are a lot of approaches which are much, much more tailored, much more protective of human rights than what is contained in the consultation paper proposal. So I think that there are established measures first, and then a proper consultation considering all kinds of measures, including those that are more protective of human rights, specifically free speech and privacy. But that would be my advice to you as advocates in Mauritius, and also to the government of Mauritius.
Thanks a ton, Toby, for being with us tonight and sharing your experience and views. Merci Nilkant, Rachna, Rajan, et Harish. Let me share with you, maybe just before, maybe we can try to think about another e-debate on the eve of the 5th, which is the submission date, because in the coming 10 days, 2 weeks, people will have a lot of information.
The 3rd is the World Press Day.
Oh, well, excellent. We do it on the 3rd then. Okay. Let's organize something together.
Yes, Dave, sorry, I forgot to mention, we actually lost 5 points with Reporters Sans Frontières on freedom of the press, because a couple of our journalists...
Let's keep it for the 3rd, all right?
Yeah, that's annoying.
Just before we end, Dave, I'd just like to remind the people, we are, as from tomorrow, we are having a template for people who don't have time to draft a letter and send a comment. So the general, the key points that we've noted, and they will just have to click to send it along with their own details. It's already there. It's an automated letter which will be directed to the
ICTA. Yeah. This is what I was thinking aloud. Let's say, why not do that up to the 3rd, for example, as you said. It will be 2 days before. Okay, it can be sent by email, because between now and the 3rd, maybe many things can happen. Okay.
No, but anyway, we are going to
working
take
on the
them on.
template.
We are going to take them down.
Yeah.
Right. And well, there's a lot to be done, and we are calling everybody, every person who feels
Everyone
concerned.
has to contribute in this. Exactly. I agree with you. Thanks a lot, guys. Merci beaucoup. Let me just share with you tomorrow. Rashna and I are having another debate. It will be at, I don't remember, maybe 6 or 8. Let's double check. We'll communicate tomorrow with and Kevin Tiruvengadam, the economist friend. We're having Rama Sitanen, the ex-finance minister, and we'll talk about strategies for the economy, the actual state of, I won't say post-COVID or re-COVID.
But not only COVID, just keep in mind a question for tomorrow, Dave. In case all these multinational companies and they have to move out of Mauritius, so
it's on the list. It's on the list.
Another concern. Yeah, thank you.
It's on the list. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Toby. We'll stay in contact and try to work together on a reply. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, all the best. Bye. Good night.
Thank you. Take care.
Cheers.